The water hits her face before the laughter reaches her ears. Cold. Sudden. Enough to steal her breath. Droplets scatter across her lashes, her cheeks, the neckline of her dress, darkening the fabric as they slide downward. The city doesn't stop. Tires hiss against pavement. A car horn blares somewhere behind her. Footsteps hesitate, then circle wider, like people instinctively backing away from something embarrassing they don't want to be part of. She stands still. Eyes closed. Not because she's weak, but because opening them too fast would give them what they want. Behind her, a woman laughs. Sharp. Bright. Unapologetic. "Oh my God," the woman says, breathless with amusement. "I barely touched you." A man laughs too. Louder. Familiar in a way that makes her shoulders tense. Someone nearby gasps. Someone else lifts a phone. She exhales slowly, water dripping from her chin onto the concrete between her shoes. The smell of the street, oil, rain, warm metal, fills her nose. Her hands curl at her sides, nails biting into her palms, grounding her there. 3 years. That's how long it's been since she last heard that laugh. She opens her eyes and turns. They're standing a few feet behind her, framed perfectly by the black luxury sedan parked at the curb. The woman, tall, polished, smiling like she's just won something, still holds the empty plastic bottle upside down, giving it a little shake for emphasis. The man beside her has one hand in his pocket, the other resting casually on the car door, his grin relaxed, entertained. As if this is all harmless fun. As if she is. "Well," the man says, eyes flicking over her wet dress, lingering just long enough to sting. "Didn't expect to run into you here." The woman tilts her head, studying her like a curiosity. "You know her?" He shrugs. "Used to." That word lands harder than the water. "Used to." The woman laughs again. "Figures." She does look familiar. Like someone who doesn't belong. A few people nearby shift uncomfortably. Phones are fully out now. Someone whispers. The moment thickens, stretches. She swallows. Her heart is pounding, but her face stays calm. That's new. 3 years ago, she would have already been apologizing, voice shaking, explaining herself, trying to make herself smaller so the world would stop pushing. Not today. "You spilled water on me," she says. Her voice is steady. Almost quiet. "You could apologize." The woman's smile widens. "Apologize?" She lets out a soft, incredulous laugh and turns to the man. "She's serious." He chuckles. "Come on. Don't be dramatic. It's just water. Just water." The words echo with old memories, him dismissing everything that hurt her, everything that mattered. Just money. Just time. Just feelings. She looks past them, briefly, to the car. The windows are tinted dark, the engine still running. A faint vibration hums through the air, felt more than heard. The woman notices her glance and scoffs. "Don't tell me you think that's yours." The man laughs again. She always liked pretending. Something shifts in her chest, not anger, not fear. Resolve. She reaches into her bag. The movement is small, unhurried, but it draws their attention immediately. The woman's laughter falters. The man straightens slightly. "Calling someone?" he asks, amused. "Who's coming to save you?" She pulls out her phone. The screen lights up her face, reflecting in her eyes. Her fingers don't shake. If you're watching this, she thinks fleetingly, aware of the phones pointed at her now, pay attention. She presses call. It rings once. Twice. The woman snorts. This is getting sad. Then the call connects. "Yes," she says, quietly. "I'm here." A pause. Her shoulders ease just a fraction. "No, I'm not hurt." She glances down at the water soaking into her dress. "Just wet." The man's smile tightens. "You done?" She listens, nodding once. 5th Street. Near the courthouse. Another pause. Her lips curve, not into a smile, but into something close. "Okay." She ends the call and slips the phone back into her bag. The street feels different now. Quieter. As if it's leaning in. The woman crosses her arms. "So? Was that supposed to scare us?" The man shakes his head, amused again, but there's something else under it now. Curiosity. A flicker of unease. You never changed, he says. Always acting like something big was about to happen. She meets his eyes fully for the first time. You always assumed the worst thing that could happen to me, she says, was losing you. Before he can respond, the sound of a car door opening cuts through the air. Slow. Deliberate. Both of them turn. A man steps out of the black sedan. He closes the door behind him, smooth and unhurried, and the sound lands like a punctuation mark. He's dressed simply, but everything about him feels controlled, the way he stands, the way his gaze moves. His eyes find her immediately. They soften. He crosses the small distance between them, stopping just close enough that she can feel the warmth of his presence, solid and grounding. Are you okay? He asks. The woman's breath catches. I am now, she replies. If this story makes you uncomfortable, good. It's supposed to. Because moments like this happen every day, quietly, publicly, with cameras rolling. Subscribe now. You don't want to miss what happens when people finally face consequences. Behind her, she feels it before she hears it, the sharp inhale, the shift in posture. Who is that? The woman asks, her voice no longer playful. The man frowns. Do you know him? She doesn't answer. The newcomer turns his attention to the woman holding the bottle, then to the man beside her. His expression doesn't change, but the air seems to tighten. You poured water on my wife, he says. Silence crashes down on the street. The bottle slips from the woman's fingers, clattering against the pavement. The man's face drains of color. You're, what? She exhales slowly, years of restraint lifting from her chest. I told you, she says. You never knew me. And as her husband reaches for his phone, dialing without breaking eye contact, the man who once walked away from her realizes, far too late, that this moment isn't ending the way he thought it would. And it's only just beginning. The sound of the bottle hitting the pavement still echoes in her ears as the memory pulls her backward, away from the street, away from the cameras, away from the man standing beside her now. 3 years earlier, the silence was louder. It started with a door closing. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just the soft, final click of a lock being turned from the outside. She remembers standing in the narrow hallway of their apartment, one hand resting on the wall to steady herself, the other wrapped around her phone. The air smelled faintly of detergent and burned toast from the morning before. His shoes were gone from the mat. His jacket no longer hung on the hook by the door. At first, she thought he'd stepped out. Gone to cool off. He'd done that before, disappeared for hours, sometimes a day, always returning with excuses that somehow became her fault for questioning. But this time, the quiet didn't lift. She called his name once. Then again. Her voice sounded too loud in the empty space. That's when she noticed the drawers. Open. Pulled halfway out like someone had been in a hurry. The closet gaped, hangers swaying gently, clothes missing in uneven patches. Her chest tightened as she walked into the bedroom, each step slower than the last, as if moving too fast would make the truth solidify. The desk was bare. Her laptop, gone. The envelope where she kept her savings, gone. She sat down on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under her weight, and felt something inside her begin to fracture. The note was on the kitchen counter. One sheet of paper, folded once. Her name written in his familiar slanted handwriting. She didn't open it right away. She already knew. When she finally did, the words blurred together, but the meaning was sharp enough to cut. He needed freedom. She was holding him back. This wasn't working anymore. And then the line that stayed with her long after the paper had torn in her shaking hands. You'll figure it out. You always do. The first night, she didn't sleep. She sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the dark screen of the television, listening to the refrigerator hum and the distant sounds of the city through the window. Every few minutes, she checked her phone, half expecting a message. A call. Something to explain that this was all a mistake. Nothing came. By the third day, the bank notifications started. Withdrawal. Transfer. Insufficient funds. Her throat burned as she scrolled, fingers numb, watching the numbers drop to zero. Money she'd worked for. Money she'd saved quietly, carefully, because she knew, somewhere deep down, that one day she might need it. She tried calling him then. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Blocked. The eviction notice came a week later, slid under the door in a plain white envelope that felt heavier than it should have. She read it standing up, leaning against the wall, because sitting suddenly felt impossible. The letters swam in front of her eyes as the room tilted. She laughed once. A short, hollow sound that startled her. "This isn't real," she whispered to the empty apartment. But it was. The last night there, she packed what she could fit into 2 bags. The air smelled stale, like dust and old memories. She paused in the doorway, looking back at the space that had once felt like a future. Then she turned off the lights and closed the door behind her. This time, she locked it herself. The car became her home after that. She learned the geography of parking lots, where the lights stayed on all night, where security didn't knock on the window, where she could sleep for a few hours without fear. She folded the seats down and arranged her bags like walls, creating a small pocket of privacy in a world that no longer offered her any. The nights were the hardest. The cold crept in through the windows, seeping into her bones. The sounds were constant, engines starting, voices passing, footsteps too close. She slept lightly, waking at every noise, heart racing, fingers clenched around her keys. Hunger was a dull ache at first. Then it sharpened. She rationed what little she had, counting bites, telling herself she wasn't that hungry, that she could wait. The smell of food from nearby restaurants became torture, grease and spice and warmth drifting through the air, reminding her of everything she couldn't have. She stopped looking at her reflection. Mirrors in public bathrooms showed a stranger, cheeks hollowing, eyes too large, skin losing its glow. She washed her face with cold water and practiced smiling, practiced looking normal, practiced being invisible. Because invisible was safer. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the remembering. Everywhere she went, something triggered a memory. A song playing from a passing car. A couple laughing on the sidewalk. A man's voice that sounded too much like his. She replayed conversations in her head, searching for signs she'd missed. Moments where she should have known. Where she should have left first. At night, curled up in the back seat, she pressed her forehead against the glass and made herself one promise: she would not go back. No matter how desperate she became, she would not beg him to fix what he'd broken. And she didn't. Weeks passed. Then months. Time blurred, marked only by the changing weather and the slow erosion of who she used to be. Until one morning, sitting in the driver's seat with the sun just beginning to rise, she realized something else had changed. The pain was still there, but so was something new. Anger. Not the explosive kind. Not the kind that demands attention. This anger was quiet, steady, and sharp. It cut through the fog in her head and settled deep in her chest. She wiped condensation from the windshield and stared at her reflection in the glass. "I'm not dying like this," she said aloud. That was the moment she disappeared. Not physically, people still saw her, passed her on the street, but the woman he'd known, the one who waited and hoped and explained herself, was gone. She took jobs that didn't ask questions. She saved every dollar. She learned how to speak less and observe more. How to listen without reacting. How to survive without relying on anyone. She changed cities. Changed routines. Changed everything that could be traced back to her old life. She became someone unrecognizable. And that was the first secret. Because disappearing wasn't about running away. It was about making sure that when she finally reappeared, no one would ever be able to hurt her the same way again. Back on the street, water still dripping from her dress, she stands beside the man who knows all of this, every night, every loss, every quiet decision to keep going. The past presses against her spine like a shadow. But it no longer owns her. And the man who left her with nothing has no idea that the woman he humiliated today is the one who survived everything he thought would destroy her. He just hasn't realized it yet. From the outside, it looks effortless. The man leans against the sedan like it belongs to him, one ankle crossed over the other, suit immaculate, posture relaxed. He smiles easily, the way people do when they're certain the world is arranged in their favor. The woman beside him mirrors that confidence, chin lifted, shoulders back, fingers resting lightly on the door as if touching something expensive reassures her. They don't lower their voices. They don't need to. "She hasn't changed," the woman says, glancing at the wet fabric clinging to the protagonist's dress. Her tone is light, conversational, like she's commenting on the weather. Still standing there like she expects an apology. The man snorts. She always did that. Like silence was some kind of moral high ground. They both laugh. It's not loud anymore. It doesn't need to be. The damage has already been done. Around them, the crowd has thinned slightly, curiosity giving way to discomfort. A few people linger at a distance, phones still raised, unwilling to miss whatever happens next. The city hums on, indifferent. The woman steps closer, heels clicking sharply against the pavement. She stops just inside the protagonist's personal space, eyes scanning her slowly, hair, dress, shoes, cataloging flaws with practiced ease. You know, she says, lowering her voice just enough to feel intimate, I thought you'd look worse. The man chuckles behind her. Give her time. The woman smiles at that, pleased. True. People like her always fade eventually. People like her. The phrase lands like a verdict. The protagonist feels it, an old instinct to shrink, to step back, to apologize for taking up space. Her body remembers even if her mind refuses. She keeps her feet planted, breathing evenly, eyes steady. The woman notices. Her smile tightens. You're staring, she says. That's rude. The protagonist tilts her head slightly. So is pouring water on someone. For a split second, something sharp flashes across the woman's face. Annoyance. Surprise. Then it's gone, replaced by amusement. Oh, honey, she says, laughing softly. You think this is about manners? The man pushes off the car, moving to stand beside his fiancée. He drapes an arm around her shoulders possessively, his hand settling there like a claim. This is about reality, he says. And your reality hasn't caught up yet. He gestures vaguely at her clothes, the street, the lack of anything visibly impressive. Look at you. Still pretending you belong in places like this. The protagonist glances around, not defensively, but thoughtfully. Glass storefronts reflect the scene back at her. Her damp silhouette framed between polished stone and steel. The contrast is stark. Funny, she says quietly. I was thinking the same thing. The woman laughs again, sharper this time. Oh, I doubt that. She turns slightly, angling her body toward the onlookers, aware of the cameras. Her voice lifts, carrying. Do you know what's really sad, she says, addressing no one and everyone at once. When someone refuses to accept that they lost. The man nods along. Yeah. It's like they think if they wait long enough, things will magically change. He looks directly at the protagonist now, his gaze cool and dismissive. They don't. The words are meant to end the conversation. To close the door the way he did years ago. He expects her to break eye contact. To look down. To retreat. She doesn't. The woman notices that too. Why are you still here? She asks, irritation creeping into her voice. Seriously. What are you waiting for? The protagonist's lips part slightly, then close again. She takes a breath, slow and deliberate. Before she can respond, the woman continues, her patience clearly thinning. Let me guess, she says. You want closure. An apology. Something to make you feel better about how things turned out. She waves a hand dismissively. You're not getting it. The man squeezes her shoulder approvingly. We're late anyway. He glances at his watch, then at the protagonist. Do yourself a favor and move on? Move on. As if survival were that simple. The protagonist feels the weight of the past pressing against her ribs, the nights in the car, the hunger, the quiet decisions to keep going. For a moment, she wonders if he truly doesn't remember, or if remembering would require him to feel something he spent years avoiding. The woman steps back, clearly done entertaining this. She reaches for the car door. Then she pauses. Actually, she says, eyes lighting up with a new idea, one more thing. She turns back, raising her voice just enough to draw the crowd's attention again. If you're going to stand here, she says, at least try not to look so pitiful. It's embarrassing. A few people shift uncomfortably. Someone clears their throat. The man laughs, shaking his head. She's right. The protagonist feels the familiar heat rise in her chest, not shame, not fear. Something colder. Behind her, she senses movement. Footsteps. Measured. Approaching. The woman opens the car door, ready to get in, already dismissing the moment as finished. The man turns away, conversation over. Neither of them sees what's coming. But the crowd does. A ripple passes through the onlookers, a subtle change in posture, attention snapping toward the black sedan. Someone lowers their phone slightly, eyes widening. The woman freezes, one foot still on the curb. The man frowns, following the crowd's gaze. What now? He mutters. The protagonist doesn't turn. She already knows. Because the sound of footsteps behind her has changed, no hesitation, no uncertainty. Just presence. And for the first time since this encounter began, the balance of the street shifts. The woman slowly turns back around. Her smile falters. The man's laughter dies in his throat. And the certainty they've been standing on, the belief that they are untouchable, that this woman is nothing, begins to crack. Not loudly. Not yet. But enough that they feel it. And that makes them afraid. Silence arrives before the answers do. It spreads the way fog does, slow, deliberate, swallowing the edges of the moment until everything feels suspended. The city noise dims, not gone, just muted enough to notice the space it leaves behind. Even the man's laugh, once so easy, seems to dissolve into the air. The protagonist stands where she is, spine straight, shoulders relaxed. Water still clings to her dress, cool against her skin, but she no longer feels exposed. She feels anchored. The man beside her doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His presence settles at her back like a hand placed gently between her shoulder blades, steady, protective, unyielding. He doesn't rush. He doesn't posture. He simply is. That restraint tells her more than any declaration could. Across from them, the woman's expression flickers through several emotions in quick succession, confusion first, then irritation, then something closer to calculation. She straightens, smoothing the front of her jacket, reclaiming her posture as if confidence were a costume she could slip back into. The man, her former fiancé, clears his throat. "This is ridiculous," he says, trying to reclaim his earlier tone. "We were just leaving." He gestures vaguely toward the car, the words meant to close the scene. To dismiss it. To reduce it back to something small and forgettable. The man behind the protagonist doesn't move. "Were you?" he asks, voice calm, almost conversational. It's not a challenge. That's what unsettles them. The woman's eyes flick to the protagonist, narrowing slightly. She studies her again, not the wet dress this time, not the shoes, but the way she's standing. The stillness. The absence of apology. "You look different," she says abruptly. The protagonist meets her gaze. "People change." The woman scoffs. "Not like this." Something in her tone betrays her, a note of unease she hadn't meant to reveal. She glances at the man beside her, searching his face for reassurance. He doesn't give it. He's looking at the protagonist too now, really looking, as if seeing her for the first time. His brow furrows, recognition warring with disbelief. He scans her posture, the way she holds herself, the lack of desperation he once relied on. "You didn't just bounce back," he says slowly. The words hang there, unfinished. The protagonist doesn't answer right away. She inhales, steady, controlled, and lets the silence stretch. She's learned the power of not filling every gap, of letting people sit with their questions. Behind her, the man shifts his weight slightly. The movement is subtle, but it draws attention. His watch catches the light, nothing flashy, just precise. Purposeful. The woman notices. Her eyes drop to his wrist, then to his shoes, then back to his face. She swallows. "Who are you?" she asks him, the edge creeping back into her voice. He doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he looks at the protagonist, waiting. It's a small thing. Almost unnoticeable. But it tells her, and anyone paying close enough attention, that whatever answer comes next isn't his alone to give. The protagonist exhales. "Let's not do this here," she says quietly. The man beside her nods once. "We can step aside." The suggestion is polite. Reasonable. The effect is not. The woman bristles. "No. I think we're past that." She gestures around them, at the scattered onlookers, the phone still recording. "If you have something to say, say it." The protagonist studies her for a long moment. She takes in the tension in the woman's jaw, the way her fingers curl slightly at her sides. Fear, dressed up as defiance. "You're not ready for what I have to say," the protagonist replies. The man laughs, a short, disbelieving sound. "You always thought you were deeper than you were." She turns to him, finally. Her gaze is level, unflinching. "You thought I was weak," she says. "Because it made things easier for you." He opens his mouth to respond, then closes it again. Something in her voice has shifted, not louder, not sharper. Just certain. The woman steps closer to him, linking her arm through his again, reclaiming the image they project together. "We don't owe you anything," she says firmly. The man behind the protagonist speaks again, still calm. "You owe her basic respect." The woman laughs, brittle. "And who's going to enforce that?" The man doesn't answer. He reaches into his pocket instead. The movement is unhurried, deliberate. Not dramatic. A phone appears in his hand, sleek, unadorned. He glances at the screen, then at the street around them, as if taking stock of the environment. The protagonist feels it then, a subtle shift, like pressure building before a storm. She recognizes it because she's felt it before, in quieter ways. In rooms where conversations stopped when someone entered. In meetings where decisions were made before anyone spoke. The woman senses it too. "What are you doing?" she asks, voice tightening. He looks at her. Ensuring clarity. He doesn't dial. Not yet. Instead, he slides the phone back into his pocket and turns to the protagonist again. "Are you comfortable continuing this here?" She considers the question. The crowd. The cameras. The way her past feels suddenly very close, pressing against her ribs. Then she nods. "I am." The woman's lips part, ready with another remark, but the man beside her interrupts. "Enough," he snaps. "This has gone on long enough." He points at the protagonist. "You don't get to rewrite history just because you showed up with someone new." She watches him, noticing the strain in his voice, the crack in his confidence. He's trying to assert control, to anchor himself to a version of events where he still holds power. "I'm not rewriting anything," she says. "I lived it." The woman's gaze sharpens. "So that's it? You want sympathy?" The protagonist shakes her head slowly. "I want distance." That answer seems to throw them both off. They'd expected confrontation. Accusation. Emotion. Not boundaries. Behind her, the man steps closer, close enough that his shoulder brushes hers. The contact is brief, grounding. She feels the quiet reassurance of it settle into her chest. The woman notices again. Her eyes narrow, scanning their proximity, the way they move in sync without touching. Something about it doesn't fit the story she's been telling herself. "Since when?" she asks, voice dropping. "Since when do you have this?" The protagonist meets her gaze. "Since I stopped explaining myself." That's the second secret. Not who she became, but how. She didn't rebuild by demanding recognition. She rebuilt by choosing silence, by letting actions speak where words once failed her. She learned which doors to walk through quietly, which rooms to enter without announcing herself. She learned that power doesn't rush. The man across from her feels it now, even if he can't name it. His eyes flick between her and the man beside her, calculating, reassessing. "This is stupid," he mutters, but his voice lacks conviction. The woman squeezes his arm. "Let's go." She pulls him toward the car, eager to retreat before whatever this is becomes something she can't control. The protagonist doesn't stop them. She watches as they move, noting the stiffness in their steps, the way their earlier ease has vanished. The woman fumbles with the car door, fingers slipping on the handle. Behind her, the man leans in slightly. "Do you want me to?" "Not yet," she says softly. The words carry weight. Because she knows something they don't. This moment isn't about spectacle. It's about positioning. About letting them leave with questions gnawing at the edges of their certainty. As the car door finally opens, the woman glances back one last time. For a heartbeat, their eyes meet. The woman's expression hardens. "This isn't over," she says. The protagonist nods once. "I know." The car pulls away, tires humming against the pavement, leaving behind the damp outline of where the bottle fell and a crowd that doesn't quite know what it witnessed. The man beside her exhales slowly. The street noise rushes back in, filling the silence. "You did well," he says quietly. She closes her eyes for a brief moment, letting the sounds wash over her, the city, the distant voices, the echo of a life she no longer belongs to. "Power doesn't announce itself," she replies. He smiles faintly. And somewhere down the street, the people who thought she was nothing begin to realize they may have made a very expensive mistake. The street doesn't notice the shift at first. It happens quietly, almost politely, the way power prefers to move when it doesn't need permission. A pause stretches between sounds. Conversations thin. The rhythm of the city stutters, then resumes at a lower volume, as if something unseen has stepped into the center and asked for room. The protagonist feels it before she understands it. A change in the air. A subtle pressure at her back that isn't threat, but certainty. The weight of a presence that doesn't need to raise its voice to be heard. Her husband steps fully into view. He doesn't hurry. He doesn't scan the crowd. His attention finds her immediately and stays there, anchored, as if the rest of the street exists only in peripheral blur. He takes in the dampness clinging to her dress, the faint tremor she's kept from her hands, the way her jaw is set just a fraction tighter than usual. Come here, he says quietly. It's not an order. It's an invitation. She turns and closes the small distance between them. The moment she's within reach, his hand settles at the small of her back, warm, steady, unmistakably real. The contact isn't possessive. It's protective. The kind of touch that says you're not alone anymore without needing words. A breath she didn't realize she'd been holding slips free. Behind them, the onlookers shift. Someone lowers their phone. Someone else steps back, instinctively creating space. The crowd doesn't know why they're doing it, only that something about this man demands it. The woman who spilled the water straightens, chin lifting, irritation flaring again as she feels attention slipping from her control. This is getting absurd, she says. We were done here. Her husband turns his head slowly, just enough to acknowledge her existence. His expression doesn't harden. It doesn't soften either. It remains unreadable. You're finished when my wife says you are, he replies. The word wife lands differently this time. It doesn't echo. It doesn't shock. It settles. The man, the one who left, lets out a short, disbelieving laugh, but it catches halfway through. He glances at the crowd, at the phones, at the way the onlookers' attention has shifted toward the man standing beside the woman he thought he knew. You don't get to decide that, he says, though the edge in his voice has dulled. This has nothing to do with you. Her husband finally turns to face him fully. It's not a confrontational stance. His shoulders are relaxed. His hands are visible, open at his sides. The calm is deliberate and unsettling. Everything that involves her, he says evenly, has something to do with me. Silence drops again, thicker this time. The woman swallows. Her confidence, once worn like armor, begins to feel heavy. She glances at her fiancé, searching for the reassurance he's always provided. He doesn't look back at her. His eyes are fixed on the man in front of them, measuring, reassessing. You don't know what you're stepping into, he says, trying to recover ground. This is a misunderstanding. Her husband's gaze doesn't waver. I understand perfectly. He shifts slightly, angling his body just enough to block the woman's line of sight to the protagonist. It's a small movement. Protective. Instinctive. The humiliation that once clung to her skin loosens its grip. She realizes then that the turning point isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with raised voices or sudden threats. It arrives with safety. The woman bristles at the gesture. She's not some fragile thing you need to shield. No, her husband agrees. She's not. He glances back at the protagonist briefly, something warm flickering in his eyes. Then he returns his attention to the pair in front of him. But she doesn't owe you access. The words land cleanly, without malice. That's what makes them sting. The man scoffs. Access? Don't flatter yourself. Her husband takes a step forward. The crowd collectively inhales. He stops just short of invading personal space, close enough that his presence is undeniable. Close enough that the man has to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact. You poured water on her, her husband says calmly. You laughed. The woman opens her mouth. It was an accident. He lifts a hand, not sharply, just enough to halt her. She stops speaking mid-word, startled by her own obedience. You don't get to redefine what we all saw, he continues. And you don't get to decide what it meant. The protagonist watches from the edge of the exchange, heart steady now. The street feels different beneath her feet. Solid. As if it's finally holding her up instead of swallowing her whole. The man shifts his weight, irritation curdling into something closer to unease. You're making a scene. Her husband nods once. You already did. A ripple moves through the onlookers. Someone murmurs. Another phone tilts slightly, framing the scene from a new angle. If you've ever watched someone cross a line without realizing it, you know this moment. Subscribe now, because what happens next is what everyone thinks they're prepared for. They're not. The woman's voice sharpens. We're leaving. She reaches for the car door again. Her husband doesn't stop her. Instead, he speaks softly, almost conversationally. Before you do, there's something you should understand. She pauses, hand hovering over the handle. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't threaten. He simply states a fact. This street has cameras, he says. So do half the people standing here. What you did didn't disappear just because you wanted to. The woman's fingers curl, then tighten. The man laughs again, too loudly this time. Are you trying to scare us? Her husband meets his gaze. I'm explaining reality. He reaches into his pocket, not hurried, not dramatic, and pulls out his phone. He taps the screen once, then slips it back away. That was a call, he says, almost as an aside. To who? The man demands. Her husband smiles faintly. Not kindly. To someone who makes problems. Stop. The word stop hangs there, undefined. The protagonist feels the shift ripple outward, like a stone dropped into still water. The crowd senses it too. The space around them widens another inch. The woman finally turns fully back around, eyes sharp, voice clipped. You can't intimidate us. Her husband's gaze flicks to her. I'm not. He looks past her, at the man beside her. I'm documenting. The man's jaw tightens. He opens his mouth to respond, then hesitates. For the first time, doubt creeps into his expression. The protagonist steps forward then, just enough to be seen. This is where it ends, she says calmly. Both of them look at her. Not down. Not past. At her. You don't get to touch me, she continues. You don't get to speak to me. And you don't get to pretend this never happened. The woman scoffs, but it's thinner now. Or what? The protagonist doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. Her husband's hand tightens gently at her back, a silent confirmation. The message is clear, whatever comes next, she won't face it alone. The man exhales sharply, frustration bleeding into his voice. This is unbelievable. Her husband nods. For you. A beat passes. Then another. The street holds its breath. The turning point settles in, not with a bang, but with a quiet, irreversible click. Like a lock sliding into place. Everything has changed. And the people who thought they were in control are only just beginning to realize it. Denial doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in quietly, disguising itself as irritation, as disbelief, as the insistence that this is all being taken too far. The man clings to it the way people do when reality starts to tilt beneath their feet. This is insane, he says again, running a hand through his hair. The motion is sharp, agitated, nothing like the relaxed confidence he wore minutes ago. You can't just show up and start throwing accusations around. Her husband doesn't respond immediately. He watches him instead, observant, unhurried, like someone noting the early cracks in a structure he already knows will fail. The pause stretches long enough to be uncomfortable. I didn't accuse, he says finally. I confirmed. The word lands with weight. The woman shifts closer to her fiancé, heels scraping softly against the pavement. She lowers her voice, but not enough to hide the edge creeping in. Let's just go, she mutters. This is pointless. She reaches for his arm, tugging slightly, urging retreat. He doesn't move. His gaze remains fixed on the man standing across from him, searching for something, an opening, a weakness, reassurance that this is bluff. You think you're important, he says, chin lifting defensively. You think throwing around vague threats makes you powerful. Her husband tilts his head, considering. Power doesn't need to convince. The crowd has grown quieter. The murmurs have faded into a tense hush, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and the occasional click of a camera refocusing. People sense it now, this isn't entertainment anymore. This is a reckoning unfolding in real time. The protagonist stands just behind her husband's shoulder, watching the unraveling with a strange detachment. She recognizes the signs. She's seen them before, years ago, when the man standing across from her realized he was losing control of a conversation. The tightened jaw. The forced laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. The way his gaze keeps flicking toward escape. You're enjoying this, he snaps suddenly, pointing at her. You always did like playing the victim. The accusation is familiar. Once, it would have cut deep. Now it barely lands. She meets his eyes calmly. You're projecting. The woman scoffs, trying to reclaim ground. Oh, please. You're really going to pretend this isn't some performance? Her husband turns to her slowly. This, he says, gesturing lightly at the street, the cameras, the people watching, isn't for you. She stiffens. Then what is it for? He looks back at the man. Clarity. The word sends a ripple through him. His bravado falters, replaced by a flash of something closer to fear. What are you talking about? He demands. Who do you think you are? Her husband exhales softly, almost amused. That's the wrong question. He reaches into his pocket again, pulling out his phone. This time, he doesn't hide it. He doesn't rush. He unlocks the screen. The man's eyes track the movement, muscles tensing. Put that away. Her husband ignores him, scrolling briefly before stopping. He turns the screen slightly, not fully toward them, but enough that the glow is visible. I asked someone to look into you, he says conversationally. Not because of today. He glances back at the protagonist, something unreadable passing between them. But because I don't leave things unexplained. The man's face tightens. You don't know anything about me. Her husband nods. That's what you thought. The woman laughs sharply, too quickly. This is ridiculous. Anyone can say that. Her husband's gaze flicks to her, then back to the man. You like control, he says. You like being the smartest person in the room. The man bristles. And people like you, her husband continues evenly, always assume no one is paying attention. He taps the screen once. The protagonist feels it then, the subtle shift from confrontation to consequence. This is no longer about words. This is about information. The man swallows. What did you do? Her husband looks up. I made one call. The simplicity of the statement is what unsettles them most. One call, the woman scoffs, but her voice wavers. You're bluffing. Her husband smiles faintly. I don't bluff. He pockets the phone again and takes a step back, reclaiming distance. The movement isn't retreat, it's space, deliberate and controlled. Let me ask you something, he says. Do you know why this feels uncomfortable? The man opens his mouth, then hesitates. It's because, her husband continues, you've spent years believing consequences were for other people. The words strike a nerve. The man laughs again, louder, harsher. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not some nobody. The woman nods eagerly. Exactly. We're not afraid of you. Her husband's expression doesn't change. You should be less concerned about me. He gestures subtly toward the protagonist. And more concerned about what you did to her. The man's gaze flicks to her, irritation flaring. This again? You're still milking that? She steps forward then, voice calm but firm. You abandoned me. He scoffs. We broke up. You emptied my accounts, she continues. I owed you nothing. You left me with nothing. The crowd shifts. Someone inhales sharply. Her husband remains silent, letting the words land. Letting the truth speak without interruption. The man's face flushes. You're twisting things. She tilts her head slightly. That's denial. The woman snaps, enough. She steps forward, pointing at the protagonist. You don't get to rewrite history because you married someone rich. Her husband's gaze sharpens for the first time. Careful, he says quietly. The woman freezes. Say what you want about me, he continues. But don't reduce her survival to convenience. The street feels smaller now. Tighter. The man's bravado crumbles another inch. You can't just dig into my life. Her husband meets his eyes steadily. I already did. Silence crashes down. The woman's breath quickens. What does that mean? Her husband considers her for a moment, then answers honestly. It means, he says, that today wasn't the beginning. He turns back to the man. It was the moment you realized you were never as untouchable as you thought. The man's shoulders tense, his stance shifting as panic finally breaks through denial. What do you want? He asks, voice lower now. Her husband shakes his head. This isn't about what I want. He glances at the protagonist. It's about what she deserves. The third secret settles into place then, unspoken but unmistakable. This man doesn't rely on public humiliation or empty threats. He relies on reach. On systems. On information. On consequences that don't shout, they arrive. The man feels it now, even if he doesn't fully understand it yet. His eyes dart toward the crowd, the cameras, the street that suddenly feels hostile. The woman grips his arm tightly, nails digging in. We should leave, she whispers urgently. For once, he doesn't argue. They step back together, retreat no longer disguised as confidence. The street watches them go, sensing the shift. Behind them, the protagonist exhales slowly. The collapse has begun. And this time, there will be no one to blame but themselves. The first consequence doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with silence. The car pulls away from the curb too quickly, tires whispering against the asphalt as it merges into traffic. The crowd exhales as one, the tension loosening but not disappearing. People linger, uncertain, glancing at one another as if asking whether it's really over. It isn't. The protagonist watches the taillights disappear down the street, her pulse steady now, her breath even. Beside her, her husband doesn't move. He stands still for a moment longer, eyes following the car's path, calculating, not with anger, but with precision. Then his phone vibrates. Once. He checks the screen, thumb hovering, and then turns it face down in his palm. That's the clock, he says quietly. She looks at him. How long? He considers. Minutes. Maybe less. The crowd begins to disperse, disappointed in a way they don't quite understand. They wanted something louder. Clearer. A visible ending. Instead, they leave with fragments, images of water on a dress, a man stepping out of a car, a shift they felt but couldn't explain. The protagonist feels strangely calm as the street empties. The humiliation that once burned has cooled into something else entirely. Resolve. Clarity. What happens now? She asks. Her husband doesn't answer right away. He scans the street, the storefronts, the cameras perched above traffic lights and building corners. Now, he says, everything they thought was private becomes very public. The car hasn't gone far when the second consequence hits. Inside, the woman grips her phone tightly, nails tapping against the glass as the silence stretches. The man drives with one hand on the wheel, jaw clenched, eyes darting to the rearview mirror as if expecting pursuit. This is ridiculous, he mutters. He's bluffing. The woman doesn't respond. Her phone lights up. A notification. Then another. She unlocks the screen, eyes scanning quickly, her breath hitching. What is it? He asks, trying to sound unconcerned. She doesn't answer immediately. Her fingers tremble slightly as she scrolls. Her name is trending. Not just hers, his. A short clip plays automatically. Water splashing. Laughter. The protagonist standing still. The man stepping into frame. The word wife clear as glass. The woman swallows hard. People are commenting, she says slowly. They're asking questions. He scoffs. So what? It'll blow over. Her phone buzzes again. A message from her sister. Is this you? What's going on? Another from a colleague. Saw the video. Are you okay? She looks up at him now, panic creeping into her eyes. This isn't blowing over. The third consequence lands harder. His phone rings. He glances at the screen, frowns, then answers, irritation sharpening his voice. What? Whatever he hears on the other end drains the color from his face. Slow down, he says. What do you mean flagged? The woman watches him, heart racing. He grips the steering wheel tighter. That's not possible. I didn't do anything illegal. A pause. Yes, I'm sure. Another pause, longer this time. His voice drops. We can talk about this later. He ends the call and stares straight ahead, knuckles white. What? She demands. What was that? He swallows. Accounting. There's an issue. Her laugh is brittle. An issue? They're reviewing some transactions. Silence fills the car, thick and suffocating. The woman looks back down at her phone. More notifications. Someone has posted a thread, screenshots, timestamps, speculation. The comments are ruthless. Why does he look so scared? Who is her husband? You don't pour water on someone unless you think you're untouchable. She feels the ground shifting beneath her, the image she's cultivated cracking at the edges. Pull over, she says suddenly. What? Pull over. He hesitates, then signals and eases the car to the side of the road. The engine idles, the hum loud in the enclosed space. She turns to face him fully now. Who is that man? He shakes his head. I don't know. You made him sound like no one, she snaps. Like she was nothing. I didn't know, he says sharply. I didn't think. That's the problem, she interrupts. You never think. Her phone buzzes again. A message from her mother this time. Call me. Now. Her breath quickens. My family is seeing this. He runs a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into fear. This is getting out of hand. The fourth consequence arrives quietly. A notification pops up on his phone, an email, marked urgent. He opens it. Reads. Freezes. What? She asks, dread curling in her stomach. He doesn't answer. She leans over, grabs his phone despite his protest, and reads the subject line. Account access temporarily restricted. Her heart drops. You said everything was fine, she whispers. He looks at her, eyes wide now, the mask fully gone. I said that because it always has been. She pulls back, suddenly seeing him differently, not confident, not in control, but scrambling. Vulnerable in a way she's never seen before. This is bad, she says. He nods, swallowing hard. This is very bad. Back on the street, the protagonist and her husband stand side by side, watching the city move around them as if nothing has changed. Everything has. His phone vibrates again. This time, he answers. Yes, he says quietly. Good. A pause. Proceed. He ends the call and turns to her. They have 10 minutes, he says. 10 minutes for what? For the last illusion to fall apart. She studies his face, searching for signs of anger, satisfaction, anything extreme. She finds none. Only focus. This isn't about punishing them, she says. He nods. No. It's about accountability. Yes. Another silence settles between them, comfortable this time. If you've ever wondered how fast a life can change, pay attention now. Subscribe, because this is the moment most people miss. Inside the car, the woman's phone buzzes non-stop now. Messages pile up. Calls go unanswered. Her reflection in the dark window looks unfamiliar, eyes wide, mouth tense, confidence unraveling. She turns to him slowly. Did you lie to me? He doesn't answer. That's enough. She opens the door. I can't be part of this. What are you doing? He asks, panic flaring. She steps out onto the curb, slamming the door behind her. I'm protecting myself. He watches her through the windshield, stunned, as she walks a few steps away and lifts her phone to her ear, voice shaking as she speaks to someone, anyone, who might help. The countdown reaches its final minute. Back on the street, the protagonist's phone vibrates. She checks it, then looks up at her husband. They're done, she says. He nods once. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of consequence. And somewhere across the city, two people finally understand that humiliation was never the punishment. It was only the warning. The street fills again, but this time, it's different. People return not out of curiosity, but instinct. Word travels fast when something shifts in public. Phones come back out. Conversations pause mid-sentence. A small crowd reforms at the edges, drawn by the same quiet gravity that settled here earlier. The protagonist feels it before she sees it. A tightening in the air. A collective awareness that whatever is about to happen won't be loud, but it will be final. The car reappears at the end of the block. It doesn't glide in confidently this time. It slows too much, hesitates, then pulls toward the curb as if unsure whether it belongs there anymore. The engine cuts. Silence rushes in. The man steps out first. He doesn't look the same. His shoulders are rigid now, posture defensive rather than relaxed. The suit that once seemed effortless now looks like armor worn too late. He scans the crowd quickly, eyes darting, calculating exits. The woman doesn't follow him out. Not immediately. When she does, it's with distance between them. A step behind. Then another. The space is intentional. Loud in its own way. The crowd senses it. Whispers ripple outward. The protagonist stands her ground. She doesn't move toward them. She doesn't retreat. She simply waits. Her husband stands beside her, hands relaxed, gaze steady. He isn't watching the man. He's watching the crowd. Because this part isn't about force. It's about witness. The man clears his throat. We need to talk. The words fall flat. The protagonist studies him for a moment, noting the subtle changes, the way his eyes no longer linger with entitlement, the way his jaw tightens before he speaks, the absence of laughter. We already did, she replies calmly. He shakes his head, frustration bleeding through. No. I mean, privately. Her husband answers before she can. No. The simplicity of the refusal sends a murmur through the onlookers. The man's gaze flicks to him, irritation flaring. This doesn't concern you. Her husband finally turns fully toward him. It concerns me, he says evenly, because it concerns her. The woman steps forward then, voice sharp with nerves. This is unnecessary. Things got out of hand. The protagonist looks at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with clarity. You poured water on me, she says. In public. The woman scoffs weakly. It was a mistake. The protagonist tilts her head slightly. You laughed. A few people in the crowd nod. Someone murmurs agreement. The woman flushes. You're exaggerating. Her husband steps forward one pace, not threatening, just present. There are recordings. The woman stiffens. The man snaps, enough. He turns back to the protagonist, voice lower now. What do you want? The question hangs there, heavy. She considers it. The past flickers through her mind, the nights in the car, the hunger, the way she disappeared piece by piece to survive. For a long time, she wanted him to understand. Now she knows better. I want the truth, she says. The man laughs, brittle. You're hearing it. No, she replies. Everyone else deserves to hear it. The crowd leans in. The woman's breath quickens. You can't do this. The protagonist's gaze doesn't waver. I already did. She turns slightly, addressing not just them, but the people watching. This man, she says calmly, left me with nothing. The man lunges forward a half step. That's not. Her husband lifts a hand. Not abruptly. Just enough. The man stops. She continues, voice steady. He emptied my accounts. He blocked my number. He disappeared. Murmurs ripple outward. Someone gasps softly. The woman shakes her head, incredulous. That's not what you told me. The man snaps back at her, now isn't the time. She ignores him, eyes fixed on the protagonist. Is that true? The protagonist meets her gaze. Yes. Silence crashes down. The man exhales sharply, panic bleeding through. You're twisting things. Her husband speaks again, his voice carrying without effort. We have documentation. The fourth secret surfaces then, not shouted, not dramatized. Confirmed. The man's face drains of color. What documentation? The woman asks, voice barely above a whisper. Her husband answers calmly. Financial records. Messages. Dates. The woman takes a step back, as if struck. You said she was obsessed, she whispers to the man. You said she was trying to trap you. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. Words fail him. The protagonist watches the fracture happen in real time, the moment the story he sold finally collapses under the weight of truth. I didn't know, the woman says faintly. The man turns on her. You don't understand. She recoils. No. You don't understand. The crowd is fully engaged now. Phones are up. Faces intent. The protagonist doesn't smile. She doesn't gloat. She simply speaks. I survived, she says. Without him. Without anyone. Her husband glances at her, something like pride flickering briefly before he reins it in. I rebuilt my life quietly, she continues. I didn't come back for revenge. She looks at the man. I came back because you thought I was nothing. The words land with precision. The man's voice cracks. You can't do this to me. She nods slowly. You already did it to yourself. The woman covers her mouth, tears welling. You lied to me. He reaches for her. Wait. She steps away sharply. Don't touch me. That moment, the recoil, is louder than any shout. The crowd reacts. A collective intake of breath. Someone whispers, wow. Her husband lets the silence stretch. Lets the weight of it settle. Then he speaks. There will be no further contact, he says calmly. No attempts to explain. No attempts to intimidate. The man looks at him desperately. You don't get to control this. Her husband meets his gaze steadily. I already do. The authority in his voice isn't cruel. It's final. The protagonist steps forward one last time, standing directly in front of the man who once left her to disappear. "This is the last time we speak," she says. He swallows hard. "I didn't think." She interrupts gently. "That was always the problem." She turns away from him then, placing her hand in her husband's. The crowd parts instinctively as they walk forward together, no one daring to block their path. Behind them, the woman sinks onto the curb, shaking, her world collapsing in whispers and screams. The man stands frozen, surrounded by people who now see him clearly. If you're still watching, understand this. Truth doesn't need to scream to win. Subscribe, because some reversals only happen once, and you don't want to miss them. The protagonist doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. The humiliation that once soaked her skin has been wrung dry, replaced with something far more powerful. Witness. And as she disappears down the street with the man who stood beside her when it mattered most, the world behind her continues to buzz, not with laughter, but with understanding. The reversal is complete. And nothing will ever be the same again. The car door closes with a soft, definitive sound. It's different from the earlier slam of doors and raised voices. This one feels intentional, chosen. The city noise dulls as the vehicle moves, streetlights sliding across the windows in long, muted streaks. Inside, the space is calm. Insulated. Safe. The protagonist leans back into the seat, the leather cool against her damp dress. For the first time since the water hit her skin, she allows herself to feel how tired she is. Not weak, just spent. Her husband drives without speaking, one hand resting lightly on the wheel, the other occasionally brushing her knee as if to reassure himself she's still there. The gesture is small, habitual, intimate. They don't rush the silence. Outside, the city continues, people walking dogs, storefronts glowing, lives intersecting and separating without knowing what just happened a few blocks away. The world didn't end. It rarely does. But something inside her has finally gone quiet. She watches her reflection in the darkened window. Her hair is still slightly wet, strands clinging to her cheek. Her eyes look clearer than she remembers them ever being. Not triumphant. Not hollow. Settled. He glances at her at a red light. "Are you okay?" The question isn't perfunctory. It's careful. She considers it honestly. "Yes," she says. Then, after a beat, "I think I am." He nods, accepting the answer without probing. He's learned not to rush her through moments like this. Healing doesn't like to be hurried. They pull into their driveway a few minutes later. The house is dark, quiet, waiting. He parks, turns off the engine, and for a moment they just sit there, the hum of the car fading into stillness. She exhales slowly. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she says. He looks at her. "Like what?" She searches for the words. "Empty. But light." He reaches for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. That's release. Inside, the house smells faintly of clean linen and the candle she lit that morning before leaving, something warm and familiar. He flicks on a lamp, bathing the room in soft light instead of harsh brightness. She slips out of her shoes, toes sinking into the rug. The simple act grounds her. He hangs his jacket, then turns back to her. "You don't have to talk about it," he says gently. "Not tonight." She nods. "Thank you." She moves toward the bathroom, then pauses. "Will you stay?" He smiles faintly. "I'm not going anywhere." The shower runs hot, steam curling around her as she stands under the water, eyes closed. She lets it wash away the remnants of the street, the grit, the chill, the last clinging threads of humiliation. Her shoulders relax inch by inch. He sits on the edge of the tub, not intruding, just present. When she steps out, wrapped in a towel, he hands her a fresh robe without comment. Their choreography is quiet, practiced, intimate in a way that doesn't need explanation. They move to the couch afterward, sitting close but not pressed together. He pours water into a glass and hands it to her. She drinks slowly, feeling it settle. Outside, a car passes. Somewhere down the block, someone laughs. Life goes on. "I thought I'd feel angry," she says softly. "Or satisfied." He watches her face, letting her lead. "And you don't?" She shakes her head. "I feel done." He nods. "That's better." She leans back against him, resting her head on his shoulder. His arm comes around her easily, protective without being tight. They sit like that for a long time. If you've ever reached the end of something that hurt you for years, you know this part. Stay with us. Some moments matter because they're quiet. Eventually, she speaks again. When you stepped out of the car, I wasn't scared anymore. His breath hitches slightly, just once. Good. She tilts her head to look at him. You didn't try to fix it. Or make it bigger. He shrugs gently. It wasn't mine to fix. It was yours to finish. She smiles faintly at that. Outside, the night deepens. The house settles around them, wood creaking softly as it cools. The world feels smaller now, contained within these walls. Are you ready to let go? He asks quietly. She thinks of the man who once walked away, of the woman who laughed, of the crowd that watched. She thinks of the version of herself who slept in a car and promised she wouldn't die like that. Yes, she says. I already did. He presses a kiss to her temple, lingering. Good. They don't talk about what comes next. There will be time for that. Tonight isn't about plans or consequences or explanations. Tonight is about rest. She closes her eyes, listening to his heartbeat beneath her ear. It's steady. Real. The street is far away now. And for the first time in a long time, she doesn't feel like she's bracing for something. She's already arrived. Morning arrives gently. Light filters through the curtains in pale bands, resting on the floor, the wall, the edge of the bed. The house is quiet in the way only early hours can be, no urgency, no demands, just space. She wakes slowly, aware first of warmth, then of breath. Her husband is beside her, one arm draped loosely across her waist, his breathing deep and even. For a moment, she stays still, listening, letting the calm settle into her bones. The street feels far away now. Almost unreal. She slips out of bed without waking him and pads barefoot into the kitchen. The floor is cool under her feet. She pours herself a glass of water and stands by the window, watching the neighborhood stir to life, someone unlocking a car, a jogger passing, a dog tugging eagerly at its leash. Normal life. The phone on the counter vibrates. Once. She looks at it, then away. A year ago, 3 years ago, that vibration would have sent her heart racing. Fear. Hope. The reflex to brace for disappointment. Now, she finishes her water first. When she finally picks up the phone, she doesn't rush. She scrolls calmly, skimming headlines, messages, fragments of commentary. The video is everywhere now, clipped and reposted, dissected by strangers who don't know her name but recognize the story. Opinions clash. Sides form. She doesn't read them all. She doesn't need to. What matters is already settled. Her husband appears in the doorway, hair rumpled, eyes soft. Morning. She turns, smiling. Morning. He crosses the room and presses a quiet kiss to her forehead. You sleep? Like I put something down, she replies. He nods, understanding exactly what she means. They sit together at the table, the simple ritual grounding them. Coffee steams between them. Outside, the world continues to move, unaware that a chapter has closed. Do you regret it? He asks gently. She considers the question carefully. Not the spectacle. Not the attention. The truth. No, she says. I regret that I ever thought disappearing meant I had no worth. He reaches for her hand. You disappeared to survive. And I came back, she adds, to live. Later, she walks alone for a while. Not to hide. Not to escape. Just to move through the city on her own terms. The air is crisp, carrying the smell of rain and fresh bread from a nearby bakery. People pass her without recognition, without judgment. That's how she likes it. At a crosswalk, she pauses, watching the light change. She thinks of the woman she was, standing in a parking lot at night, counting coins, promising herself she would keep going even if no one ever noticed. She kept that promise. When she returns home, her phone buzzes again. This time, she answers. Not to argue. Not to explain. Just to speak one sentence, calmly and clearly, and then end the call. No performance. No drama. Dignity doesn't need an audience. That afternoon, they sit together on the couch, sunlight warming the room. He leans back, pulling her close, and she rests her head against his shoulder. The future doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels open. What happens now? He asks. She smiles faintly. Now I stop defining myself by what I survived. He kisses her hair. Good. Outside, a car passes. Somewhere, someone laughs. Somewhere else, someone is learning, too late, that actions echo. She doesn't dwell on it. Her legacy isn't built on their collapse. It's built on her quiet persistence. On the way she refused to disappear completely. On the choice to return not as a plea, but as a presence. If you're still here, take this with you. You don't need revenge to reclaim your worth. You need truth, timing, and the courage to stand still when the world expects you to break. Subscribe if this story stayed with you. And if you're carrying something heavy, let us know in the comments. What would you put down if you could? She looks out the window one last time as the sun dips lower, the day easing into evening. The past no longer pulls at her heels. She's walking forward now. Unburdened.